have specialty components that allow them to work with the non-Hertzian energy. Otherwise, they'd be destroyed. So you have to use special type of capacitors that will work as a capacitor, because with longitudinal energy, a lot of capacitors look like a resistor. And a lot of diodes act as a resistor. Current does not go just one way. It goes both ways. So it doesn't behave as a diode. There are certain chemistries that are used. I had to actually source parts from Russia, and we're talking about old Cold War technology, semiconductors, when I was doing my research, in order to find the proper chemistries to work with this stuff. Spent a lot of time on it. Why I brought out the water smacker was because, and I had, by the way, had developed that technology prior to most of this other stuff, because it imparts energy to the water. It charges the water molecules. It allows the water to be absorbed by the cells of the human body. If you drink water and it's not in the proper state, the water that's not in the proper state just goes to adding to your interstitial fluid. It does not go into your cells and cleanse your cells out. More and more, there's so much EMF pollution out there that water is losing its charge, the natural charge it gets when it's in the Earth's water cycle. And with the advent of 4G, LTE, and a lot of the Wi-Fi stuff, there's towers going up that are transmitting 2450, 2100 to 2300 PCS. These frequencies knock the energy out of the water, knock the electrons out of the water. When water becomes positively charged, it becomes acidic, which means more incidence of cancer. So if you want to do your body good, you want to drink water that is really negatively charged. So that's why I thought it was time to come out with this technology. But that's only one of the things. Now we'll go on to this. You've probably seen those along the interstates. Those are transponder sites. They call them checkpoints. In 2004, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that smart devices are exempt from the privacy laws. So they started putting spyware in smart devices, even our cars. Every model year car from 2004 on sold in the United States had to be equipped with one of these transponders. As you're going down the road, it's sending out queries. They're general queries. They're not directed at a single vehicle. They are requesting your vehicle speed. Your vehicle responds with a packet. In that packet of information is a lot of criteria like your VIN number. Also contained is your mileage, the speed you're operating, things that they determine. Also the version of the firmware that you have in your ECU. They have the ability of shutting your car down, essentially leaving you on the side of the road while they reflash your ECU to bring it up to date so that they can make sure you're continued compliance with EPA regulations. They haven't started doing that yet, but they have the capability of doing that. It's on all vehicles that are CAN bus equipped. CAN bus, it's a common communications mode, and it supports all of the EPA diagnostics, mission control and all that. They have different looking antennas, but they all perform the same function. They have the flat panel antennas. These operate on 2450 as well, but they're in the European Wi-Fi band, which is a government band here in the States. Not only this, they have put RFID chips in the tires, and there are checkpoints, most of them are at way stations, with flat panel antennas aimed down at the road, over either in the center between the lanes or over each lane. And they pick up the RFID chips that are in the tires. And when you have tires, you buy them and put them on. The tire dealer is supposed to scan the DOT number on the tire, which is the number that's in the chip. And that number assigns that tire to you. And they're supposed to track the tire from the time it's manufactured until the time it goes to the dump, essentially. But they can use that to track your movements, even if your car is not transponder equipped. That's the Stanmeyer, or what is it? Okay. Stanmeyer dune buggy. I can't go into details because there was an NDA involved, but as you can see, I was there. There are some photos missing. That's okay. How do we activate the slide of the projector here? I had some photos of these that were close-ups. There we go. Can we adjust the zoom on this? It's on the front? Okay. Because I should learn how to use it. All right, spyware. These are components out of a cell phone. The top one here is from a Motorola Droid. This is a Motorola Droid 2. This is a Motorola Droid 3. This ribbon here shows you how they are used. They're attached to the ribbon, and is there a focus adjust here? It's kind of hard to make out. Up here? I don't see a black knob. I don't see a focus control. Anyways, these are infrared cameras that are installed in cell phones. They put them behind a little grayed out window in the digitizer. That's the technical name for the screen, the glass on the screen. The digitizer has these two grayed out windows that you don't see because they are window tinted with a gray film that passes infrared. One of these windows is for a camera, a still camera in infrared. The other is for an infrared flash LED. Is it? I don't see one. Yeah. Anyways, they don't hide this information from you because the Supreme Court ruling on this was made public, but they don't publish it in the newspaper. But you can find it if you go and look it up. It was in 2004. The Supreme Court had ruled that since smart devices are optional to us, if we choose to use them, we are choosing to give up our privacy. So, well, I have these so y'all can look at them later if you need to come up and look at them. That's pretty much ends this part of the presentation. What I have is, John, you want to come up? You probably remember John's presentation with the Ormus.
This is the Ormus that we precipitated out. It has settled. And this is the clear liquor that you're going to pour off and decant. It's already been done twice. And with a laser, remember we talked about coherent energy. Coherent energy, laser energy is coherent energy, and it can identify, it's one of the ways you can identify Ormes materials. Is this
the cap off? And put your hand.
Okay. And Bob's going to put his hand there. But as we shine it through, there'll be a beam, and it may be hard to get close enough, but in the beam there's a lot of little sparkles that are visible. And that's what happens is the laser beam, being coherent, energizes and drives it from the ORME state, and it starts to precipitate out into its parent metal or configuration.
This is the normal state.
And in the normal state.
Yeah.
And if it'll settle back in because the rest of the material is calling it and saying, hey, you don't belong out there, you're one of us, and come on back, so it'll eventually settle out. And this is even a more narrow beam, and it's more difficult to see, but if we get it down, sometimes we can get some reflection.
Want me to explain it? You'll get sparkles that occur because when the ormus is in this state, it has a Meissner field which blocks gravity field energy and EMF. The laser is coherent. The laser can penetrate the Meissner field. It can impart energy into the ormus, which causes that Meissner field to collapse, and it emits photons, which are visible. So you see sparkles as the ormus reverts back to normal state. But it won't stay normal state because it's absorbing energy and it's going to go back to its high spin state and become invisible again.
Yeah, and remember we talked about the Meissner field does not like electromagnetic energy. So if you shine visible light in there, it's just going to move out of the way and say, I'm not playing your game, so it doesn't give the result. And that's why this can be used to identify it.
One of the properties that this has, since it is non-electromagnetic, is that it can apply the energy to the water. Besides charging up the water, it can also excite the ormus to the point of collapse. While it absorbs that energy, it becomes normal state, metallic, crystalline, gold, platinum, whatever, iridium, whatever the metals, the ormus metals are.
And there it will precipitate out, and you can collect it in...
This is after 5 hours of being energized from water that contains ormus. You can see the gold-colored sediment in the bottom.
And because there's a huge not a huge bolus of ormes in there, it's not going to tempt it to come back as much.
Yeah, it's been changed to metallic state. Once it's changed to metallic state, it does not go back to the ormus state.
Yeah. And remember, we talked about saturation, how many electrons are in the Cooper state. And so if you draw it partially out, it can go back. But if you fully precipitate it out and all the Cooper pairs are broken, it's a metal and it's going to behave like one.
That's as much as I can say.
Okay. And then the other thing we noticed is after a while that will stop happening with the lasers, but if you agitate it again, it'll reconfigure the process, and that's food for thought. I haven't figured that out yet.
Just so you all know, I've been doing okay. I had a heart attack March 22nd of this year. Had coronary artery bypass, triple cabbage, done on March 30th. And then my immune system was weakened from that. So my cancer returned. But I've been drinking the charged water. And I drank that through the whole time I was in the hospital. A friend of mine, Thomas Robinson, brought water to me at the hospital, and I've changed my diet. I try to stay away from all the processed foods. I avoid wheat products, because wheat is not so good for us. I thought it was, but found out that the carbohydrate in wheat digests so much quicker, breaks down into sugar 40 to 60% faster than granulated sugar itself. So it causes spikes in blood sugar, and it is a common cause of type 2 diabetes in this country today. And there are food allergies. Yeah. I'm talking about the wheat that is on the market now. It's been modified after 1985, so starting in 1986. Well, it doesn't really matter, because if you buy white bread is bleached whole wheat anyway, so it still contains everything the same. What you need to find is the old-fashioned style wheat. Have that ground. That stuff's good. Nothing wrong with that. but it's the one they modified so they can increase the yield 10 times. There is, you hear a lot of people that are sensitive to wheat gluten. The wheat gluten, there is an enzyme in there that it acts like an opiate and creates addiction. Is there a focus on that? I had some photos on here that had close-up shots of these, and I don't know why they didn't get onto there because I had requested they be put on. And it showed up close, shots, macro shots of these cameras. Okay, now you can see it. And you know how tiny that is, by the way. I mean, these are surface mount components. Because they don't need video, so they don't have a whole lot of pixels to them. They don't need it for a black and white infrared-based photo. And the little LED, you can actually see how small this is if you remove the cover, the little rubber cover. You see how big the camera is on this one over here versus the little black right here next to the LED. The LED is the one closest to the speaker. Let me use the pointer to point at it on the screen. All right, that's the LED, that's the camera. That's the LED, that's the camera. That's the LED, that's the camera. This is a Droid, Droid 2, Droid 3. Can you imagine how much smaller they're going to get? All right, that's it really for my presentation today. I hope that I was able to give you enough information to be able to do something with it. My main thing I was trying to get out information about Tesla. So many people misunderstand what it was that Tesla did, especially with the wireless transmission of electricity. It is not electromagnetic. It is non-Hertzian in nature. So I gave you the information about how you can achieve non-Hertzian transmission. You do not run current through the coil. All that is, it creates a magnetic moment which inhibits the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob Boyce. Thank you. We have questions. We have questions. He has answers. Here we go.
Hi, Bob. I was wondering if you know of a way that people can find the RFID chips in their tires and disable them.
The RFID chips in the tires are actually embedded in the tire at the time of manufacture. Really, the only way you could disable it would be to use a microwave transmitter or something to burn it out, or use EMP to knock it out. I don't really worry about the RFID tracking on the road. What I'm more concerned about with is the transponders that are in the vehicles, because I think with that, not only do they have the ability to find you, they have the ability to shut you off, leave you on the side of the road, and send the cops to come get you if they want you. Number one. Number two, they have the ability to know your speed at any time, every time you pass a checkpoint. So if you go through a zone, a construction zone, anything, and they catch you speeding, eventually, the way our law enforcement and government is going, they will start issuing citations based upon this technology. They want to get the system fully built out. They're putting these on all the highways, even on city street corners, at intersections, so they know everywhere you turn. Every turn you make, every exit you get on, get off. They're building up the density of this. They started out with 1 mile intervals on the highways. Now they're down to a 1/4 mile interval on the highways in some areas. And also, if they want to tax you for the miles driven, they know how many miles you've driven. It's in the data.
Bob, I have some old Edison batteries that were built in '28, and could you tell me the mixture they need in them, because I haven't been able to find out that.
Potassium hydroxide.
At what ratio?
It's the normal molar ratio, 28% for potassium hydroxide.
28% 20%. And then what's the voltage? I remember that there's something weird about you charge them at 16.
Only if you add cesium to the mix in order to increase the reaction rate. They do that in cold climates. But if you're not in a cold climate,
No, they're in
don't do
the
that.
Caribbean, actually.
Yeah. So, and what that does is that alters the voltage. It brings the voltage up a little bit. Instead of 1.2 volts per cell, you're talking about 1.35, I believe, is for the cesium added to it. And it's just a small amount added.
But if you're not in the cold, you don't need that. And would the charge voltage be somewhere around 16.5, if I remember right?
You're talking about for 10 cells in series?
I forget how many.
Because it's a per cell voltage.
Right, but in series, yeah, getting
Yeah.
up to the what was originally designed to be a 12 volt.
Yes.
But what I remember is the charge voltage was much higher than normal.
Yes, yes.
But once they're-
1.6 volts is common for when you have the cesium added.
And without?
Or lithium, by the way. Lithium works too.
But if I don't need that,
Then standard, like 14.4, 14.6 volts
okay.
is sufficient. You can't overcharge them. All it does is just,
Outgas them a
disassociate,
little bit.
outgas. And I actually had bought some battery miser caps and adapted them to my cells, and they got all those too. I had 80 cells. I had 40 cells at 160 amp hour and 40 cells at 80 amp hour, and I had those were all in series, and the two sets were paralleled. And because my insurance company had a $12,000 payout limit, and it was $17,000 to replace what I had to buy lead acid cells and go with 435 amp hour at 48 volts. And so my system is compromised now because I can't run it down as much as I used to, and I can't charge it up without worry about, boiling the batteries.
The other question on the battery smacker, does that have, what's the specs, or how many amp hour battery bank, I guess, can I charge with that?
The bigger the battery, the one thing about longitudinal energy, when you entrain it like this, it will keep increasing the output based upon what the output will take. So it can vary, and it's also not constant. When the black hole at the center of our galaxy swallows a sun, depending on the size of the sun, there's a burst of energy. It's not a stable output. This is why you don't want to use this to just run something. You want to use it to charge batteries, and then use the batteries to run something. Have 2 or more banks of batteries, charge, and then switch over and use them while another bank is charging.
Okay, so would I be able to charge a 48 volt battery bank, for example?
These are only designed for a 12 volt battery, but you could use 4 of these and charge each 12 volt section.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing is people have always asked about battery chemistries, what are compatible. I know they do work on nickel metal hydride because they have a liquid electrolyte in them, but they typically don't work on gel cells because gel cells use a gel and the water in the gel is locked up in a substrate. They typically do not work on lithium batteries. They're made specifically for lead acid battery chemistry. Now, the older version, they had the choke on it, this model right here, that would charge any battery chemistry, but at a lower rate because no longitudinal energy is actually flowing. It's only getting converted by the regeneration diodes. And there's more research is required for this in order to improve the energy harvest. This is where I stopped because I don't have a semiconductor lab. And I know the requirements. It's germanium, but you've got to find the right doping in order to maximize energy harvest. Thomas Henry Moray had a very good process going.